there, and welcome to the Secrets of Organ Playing podcast. I'm your host, Vidas Pinkevičius. Welcome to Secrets of Organ Playing podcast number 93. This is Sunday, May 5th, 2017. And today's guest is an American concert organist, Wyatt Smith, who is a native of Rapid City, South Dakota. Wyatt concertizes extensively throughout the United States by keeping an active concert schedule. He has performed in 28 states throughout the U.S. over the last 7 years, and more recently in Europe. Notable performance venues include the U.S. Air Force Academy Protestant Cadet Chapel in Colorado Springs, St. Thomas Church in New York, St. Mark's Episcopal Cathedral in Seattle, the Spreckels Organ Pavilion in San Diego, the National City Christian Church in Washington, D.C., among many others. He performed at the 2012 AGO National Convention in Nashville, Tennessee as a rising star, having won the AGO Quimby Regional Competition for Young Organist, Region 6 in 2011. His performances have been heard on several episodes of American Public Media's Pipedreams. His achievements in performance were recently recognized when he was named as a member of the Class 2016 by the Diapason's Program 20 Under 30, which recognizes young leaders in the fields of organ, harpsichord, carillon, and church music. Wyatt has a passion for commissioning and performing new works for the organ. Over the last several years, he has commissioned premiered works by David Chervin, Carson Kuhlman, Emma Ludimer, Kurt Knecht, Christine Langlois, Pamela Reuter-Finstra, and others. Wyatt is currently a doctoral student at the University of Washington in Seattle, where he studies organ performance with Dr. Carol Terry. He received his Master of Music degree from the Yale's Institute of Sacred Music and the Yale School of Music, where he studied organ performance with Dr. Martin Jean. His Bachelor of Music degree in organ performance is from the University of South Dakota, where he was an organ student of Dr. Larry Jewell. Wyatt is the organist at St. Alphonsus Parish in Seattle, Washington, where he plays the Fritz Richards organ, Opus 4. So today we talk about Wyatt's career as an organist so far, how he first fell in love with the organ, what pieces he played at the beginning, what was the most challenging thing for him, what he is currently working on, and of course about his newest research on the latest compositions of Max Reger. Let's go to the show. So Wyatt, thank you so much for joining in this conversation. We are so far away, right? You are in Seattle and I am in Vilnius, Lithuania. And I think the difference between us is like 10 hours, right? You are on Pacific time.
Yes, yes.
So you are early morning, just probably got up. So good morning, Wyatt, and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Excellent. This will be a fun podcast because, whenever we have this great distance between us, we have a little bit of a sound delay. And on Zoom platform that we are using, I would be talking something and Wyatt would be, answering a question, and I would get a question right away and start asking, and jumping back and forth with sound delays is a little bit tricky. Not that tricky like we would be on the moon or on Mars, but still have a second or so of delay. So Wyatt, let us start with this wonderful childhood memory you probably have about organs. How did you first fell in love with the organ?
Well, it all started when my mom put me in soccer when I was in kindergarten and first grade, and I absolutely hated it. And so when I entered second grade, my mom told me I had to do something, and for some reason, I chose the piano. And it was shortly after beginning piano lessons in second grade that I started paying attention to the organ in church and just listening more to it. But the Sunday that I was sold on the organ and wanting to play the organ was I saw my future teacher playing with her feet.
Wow.
And to this day, pedal technique is one of my favorite things to work on. And it's still so fascinating after all these years.
I have this memory that whoever likes dancing should be fond of pedal playing too, because it's so similar, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, though I don't know how good of a dancer I am, but
No.
Yes.
We move feet, the same thing. So wonderful. And what happened? What was the first instrument that you played? Wyatt, do you remember?
It was Reger's digital instrument just at the church I grew up at in Rapid City, South Dakota. Mm-hmm. And it was, I think, a couple of years before I even played a pipe organ. And I don't even remember which pipe organ was the first one that I played. But for my first 4 years of organ lessons, I started when I was in fifth grade. They were on this Reger's. And then in high school, I had my regular lessons on a pipe organ.
Wonderful. Yes, electronic organs are very useful for practice purposes, right? You can have a decent size 3, 5, 4, or even 5 manual instrument in your home or even studio.
Yes.
You could try out hundreds of different combinations, and you could be well prepared for organ recital career later on when you are practicing with, let's say, 3 swell pedals and or for the 5th crescendo pedals and many multiple buttons, pistons. Wonderful. So, Wyatt, what was the first piece that you played on the organ? Do you remember?
I don't remember the first piece. What I recall from my first year lessons. Hang on. Okay, I scared myself a little bit. My first year of organ lessons, I spent playing hymns and learning the liturgy. And I learned some small pieces out of Flor Pater's little organ book.
Yes.
But I remember the first major work that I learned from the literature was my freshman year in high school, which was the Prelude, Fugue, and Chaconne of Buxtehude. And I still play that piece to this day. It's such a fun piece. It's,
I think, Books WV 137, I think.
Yes, that's right.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful piece. Yeah, very virtuoso pedal line, stilus fantasticus structure with multiple toccata-like figurations and some of the fugal sections beautifully. And at the end, this beautiful Chaconne-like passages in the pedals variated over the manual lines is beautiful too. Was it difficult, this Buxtehude, for you?
I don't remember it being difficult. It was just work. But I had fun. I had a lot of fun learning it and playing it. And every once in a while, I even go back and listen to that recording from 2000. Oh, crud. When was that? 2006 is when I played that for the first time. So it's been a while, but it was the first time I ever played in a student organ recital. It a lot of fun.
I remember having an organ student maybe a couple of years ago. She was majoring in art, and she is going to graduate next year. She's no longer studying organ, but wanted to play this Buxtehude's piece, the same that you're mentioning. And actually, it was very, very frustrating for her because she had short legs, and could not reach very well the pedals. She was a small girl, and so we switched, I think, to the easier piece by some of the Baroque composers. I don't remember, but yeah, it's not very easy to master, especially towards the end, right? This and the fugue too. The manual entrance and the pedal part is quite easy. The first maybe page, right, or so, but then it becomes tricky once the polyphony.
Yeah, the one thing I think that makes that piece somewhat difficult is the large amount of varying sections. You're always changing characters after a few measures, especially in the prelude. You're over here and then you're over there. It's the notes might be easier than other pieces, but just making a conversation out of those different sections is where I think it starts to take on a new level.
Yeah. Have you ever tried, Wyatt, to reduce the polyphonic texture of this piece into, chordal notation, into continual, like almost like chords, but just the bass. The bass is preserved, and then you add intervals. 5/3 would be the root position chord. 6 would be like 6 chord first inversion, and so on. It's possible to almost simplify almost every Buxtehude's piece like this, because continual notation was common practice at the day. And those types of polyphonic fugues, they are not too complex polyphonically, not like Bach, right? And there are some manuscripts preserved just like Buxtehude's, but with single line, and you have to decipher and make your own improvisation based on this bass line, and it would be like Buxtehude's fugue. So have you tried this type of practice?
I've never done that method of practice in that piece, but where I do employ that is in Bach trio sonatas, especially slow movements. You get all of these flourishes that cover up the main harmony in each measure and can, in some ways, bog down the tempo and remove the flow. So if you take away all of the extra notes and just play the harmonic progression, you have this idea of how the harmonic rhythm moves forward, and then you can put the ornamental flourishes back in to embellish.
Wonderful. I haven't thought about that way. I know in Bach's writing, all three parts are independent, but at the same time, you have the harmony structure skeleton, right? All the time. But when you simplify that and sort of imagine being like a continuo player, like a harpsichord player in this four people ensemble, right? Flute, maybe violin for the hands, and then cello, right? If cello with the violon, that would be like a double bass.
Yes.
Because you have to double an octave lower, and plus the harpsichord is 5 people playing these 3 sonatas. And there are beautiful recordings like this of these pieces. And yes, the harpsichordist would be playing chords probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful. Good idea. I think our organists around the world from 89 countries can relate to this. And whenever they play a Bach piece or Baroque piece, which is polyphonically complex with counterpoints, double counterpoints, invertible counterpoints, they can decipher the texture and make it, reduce it into chords and try what kind of chords are there, right? In each, probably in each beat maybe, or twice a measure, however often this changes, right?
Yes.
So very interesting idea, Wyatt. Can you tell me what was the most challenging thing for you when you learned those trio sonatas?
For me, learning a trio sonata is not to have one voice be the dominant voice, that all three are in conversation, and give each voice its independence in context. But at the base of that, I do everything in my power just to keep it together and not let one voice go running off a side path. But when I practice trio sonatas, most of the time it's practicing right hand and pedal, left hand pedal, hands together, and which helps solidify these different parts and different combinations and how each of these parts relates to another without the third. And I think that really helps form a foundation to go out and perform these pieces with confidence.
Wonderful idea to practice trio sonatas in combinations of two voices. Do you know why most people fail at learning trio sonatas? They love these pieces, right? And they would play them. You know what's the number one reason I found out is they skip the first step. They never practice single lines, you know.
Yes.
For long enough, and they jump into playing two-part combinations right away, which of course is tricky.
Yes.
Tricky
yeah.
people. Wonderful. I remember actually playing these sonatas, some of them in public. Have you played them in public too?
Oh yeah. I've played 3 of the 6 trio sonatas: C minor, C major, and E minor are the 3 I've done.
I haven't played, I think, D minor and E minor. Other than that, I played them all. But my experience with trio sonatas in public were not that great. I was, so energetic, and I thought, ambitious maybe. Oh, trio sonatas I can master, and I could play them during, some of the easier pieces when I'm playing all Bach recital, right? But that wasn't easy at all. Even the first E flat major sonata, for me, it's quite very challenging. When I practice, it's not too challenging, But when somebody else is listening, that's the tricky part.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
agree.
Yeah. One thing I've experienced when playing trio sonatas in concert is that they're such delightful pieces, and audiences enjoy listening to them. But unless the people in the audience are organists, they don't realize that those are some of the hardest pieces we play. Because the texture is so thin, you have to be spot on when you play it. And on these concerts, I might play Vierne symphony movements or Mendelssohn sonata, but it's usually the trio sonata that I get a little antsy about playing, just because it is so thin, and you have to play it just right to pull it off.
Exactly. We share the same common experience. People would appreciate dramatic toccatas and fantasies and improvisations so much, with bombard registration, and this is understandable. But when you play these three virtuoso but very elegant lines, they think, "Oh, that's really fun,"
Mm-hmm.
and fun, but a different kind of fun, right?
Yeah.
Different kind. You're constantly on the line, like we say, cow on the ice.
Yes.
Similar. Do you have this expression, cow on the ice?
No, I haven't heard that, but I'm trying to think of what we do have. It'll come to me eventually.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like it's very slippery, right? And you have something to hold on. Maybe pedal line would be a good part to hold on to.
When I was in my undergraduate degree, in my freshman year, my professor, Dr. Larry Scow, had me learn 2 trio sonatas, the C minor and the C major. And he was the one that taught me to practice in these dual combinations following learning each line individually. And one thing he emphasized was practicing the pedal line first and then bringing in the combination of right-hand pedal, left-hand pedal, because in reality it's the pedal that holds these two parts together. It's very much the basso continuo of these two soloist lines.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. It helps to think of the bass line as basso continuo. Mm-hmm. Exactly. And then it glues them together, right? And you feel like you are actually managing correctly and feeling more secure, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Wonderful. And Wyatt, what did you go for the graduate degree?
I attended Yale University's School of Music and Institute of Sacred Music as a student of Martin Jean.
Wonderful. Give my regards to Martin Jean if you meet him, because I think almost 1 year ago I talked with him on this podcast, because entire organ department of the Yale University went to visit the Baltic states. And as part of this trip, they visited my church too, in Vilnius University, St. John's Church. They played, they had a master class there, and Professor Martin Jean graciously agreed to have a beautiful conversation. We had a real cup of cappuccino. Together with you, Wyatt, we're having a virtual cup of cappuccino.
Yes, absolutely.
Over coffee with Professor Martin Jean for a long time, and it was fun. Wonderful person. I bet he was a great mentor to you.
He was, absolutely. I had the opportunity to do 4 degree recitals as a student of his, and the first one of those 4 is still one of my favorite performances I gave. It was on the mean tone Taylor and Booty instrument at Yale Divinity School, and I did an entire program of North German repertoire, including Matthias Weckmann's 7 verses on Es ist das Heil, and just having just this thrilling feeling when you get to the end of the 6th verse, which is a wonderful Krell Fantasia, and it's just awesome. And he really helped me bring that music to life on that instrument. It was a lot of fun.
This cycle, Es ist das Heil, probably is a pinnacle of North German chorale writing, right? Mm-hmm. This particular Fantasia is so long, right? It has maybe 5 parts together, and you have sometimes two voices in each hand on two separate microphones, I think, and with echo effects. It's so similar to how music was made in Weckmann's day, polychoral music, Italianate tradition, right? When ensembles would stand in different balconies, and singers with instrumentalists would be contrasted and playing in dialogues and duets. Wonderful.
Yes.
I'm so delighted you played this piece. And this entire cycle. Do you remember, Wyatt, I think the part where the left hand has to play with the 16-foot trumpet? It's
yes.
Maybe third verse, I think.
That's right, the third verse, yes.
Verse, and the tenor part is played by the pedal trumpet, right? And then right hand soprano and alto is played by the principals, maybe 8-foot or 8 and 4. I believe you can this combination if principals are gentle enough. Doesn't it remind you of a wonderful instrumental ensemble? Trumpet, of course, and bombarde in the left hand, like a real, I don't know, wind instrument, or say, right?
Yeah.
This music is so enchanting.
Yes. Yeah, and playing, especially that cycle, you become a consort of instruments, and you really have to keep that in mind when bringing that music to life. You're playing the music that 4 or 5 people, just like with trio sonatas, would be playing, but you have to do that same amount of music making as a single musician.
Yes, like a early human orchestra, right?
Yes.
Today we can play organ arrangements, transcriptions from real symphonies, but back in that day, 17th century, middle of 17th century, that was probably as far as people went, right? Imitating orchestras or ensembles in that day. Beautiful. So, Wyatt, and what are you practicing right now? Have you, by the way, you haven't had the time to practice this morning? No, probably not. Yeah, but you probably today. What will you practice today?
Well, that's a great question. There's so much to practice at this point. Probably somewhere today I'll practice some continual work for the Baroque Ensemble concert at the University of Washington coming up in a couple weeks. And also on that concert I'm playing Bach's double harpsichord concerto in C major. I think it's 1061. I'm playing the second harpsichord in that, so I'll probably practice that at some point today. And I have some notes to learn. I'm actually doing a performance for the North Central Regional Convention of the AGO in June. They've contracted me to give the premiere of 5 new works for the organ written by composers under 30. Wow. And so I'm in the midst of learning those works at the moment. There are a couple of them that have some very, very tricky sections that I'm starting to pull my hair out, but I'll get there eventually. It's just a lot of slow practice, slow and meticulous.
Do you compose music yourself, Wyatt?
No, I don't. I leave that to people who do it much better. I'm a trained organist, and I leave it to composers who work on their craft like I work on mine.
Wonderful. What stops you from composing?
I've just never.
Let me interrupt you. Before you answer this question, let me ask a different one before, okay? Do you have an sometimes inner urge to compose, or not at all?
Every once in a while, but usually that has manifested itself in composing different versettes, proper versettes for Sundays, different Sundays of the church year. But those are only a few measures long. And I can do that in a half hour or an hour without too much effort. But anything beyond that, I leave it to the professionals. But on the other hand, I do improvise. So
it's the same, right? It's not written, but it's spontaneous music making. And if you record, actually, do you record your improvisations, Wyatt?
I haven't recently. Back when I was in my master's program, I did record some of my improvisations just to go back and be able to study the structure and different aspects as I was studying improvisation as part of the program.
Mm-hmm. So if you record, for example, your improvisation and upload to your YouTube channel, YouTube has this wonderful feature of reducing or speeding up the tempo by half. You can listen to entire piece or anything, actually any video there, half speed, 50% slower, which means that, you get to write down some things. It's like a long musical dictation, but I've written down some of my improvisation this way, some of more successful pieces that I wanted to preserve, and with multiple repetitions, it's possible. And it's really fun because it also develops my air training too.
Wow.
Wonderful. You see how technology facilitates creativity today. You don't even have to worry about writing down things so much today. If you can be fluent in producing music on the fly, that's almost, it's almost enough. It's like transcribing text from speech to written down. This machine softwares are getting better by the day, and very, very right. So wonderful. And can you tell us a little bit about your work, Wyatt? What it is that you do?
Well, currently here in Seattle, I'm pursuing my doctoral degree at the University of Washington with Dr. Carol Terry. So that's a main focus right now, but I'm also at St. Alphonsus Parish, Seattle, where I play a beautiful tracker organ by Paul Fritz and Ralph Richards. And between those two things, it keeps me very busy, but I still find time to travel and perform. So, yeah.
Wonderful. So you have an active church musicians life and also a researcher, right? What is your research about mainly today?
Most of my research currently focuses on the life and works of Max Reger, specifically the works composed in the last couple of years of his life, both organ and orchestral and choral pieces.
What opus numbers are there at the end of his life? Do you remember?
Well, the main works that I'm focusing on are his Opus 145, which are the 7 pieces. That the most famous of these works is the third, Weihnachten, which features that wonderful duet at the end of Vom Himmel hoch, from heaven above, and Stille Nacht, together in dialogue. And it's absolutely beautiful. But this set also features the Trauerode and the Dankpsalm, which are a wonderful musical pairing. The Dankpsalm is performed every once in a while, but the Trauerode these days it's not often performed, or at least I've never heard it performed live. And I'll be learning those two works later this year for my lecture recital. But besides that, the other main opuses I'm looking at are Opus 144 A and B, which is his Requiem and Der Einsiedler. And it's fascinating to put all of this in context of World War I.
Wonderful. It's Reger last pieces are not that often performed. I've heard it, I think, Requiem once. Yes, but only once. And his music is so colorful and so full of grammatical language, late romantic, but at the same time it's highly contrapuntal, right?
Yes.
Highly contrapuntal, like Brahms's, so to say. Of course, Bach was big influence, and Brahms on him probably. So I think when you touch the music of these masters, probably you feel the rhythm of their lives too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that it's so fascinating to play the works of Reger, because it's truly unlike anything else. You have to go into his sound world and what those organs sounded like and how they were played, just like you would for playing North German Baroque music or playing Franck and playing Cavaillé-Cols. But it takes a little more effort with Reger, because at least in the United States, there are very, very few German Romantic inspired instruments. So many instruments are built on French models or American classic models and whatnot. So it takes going over to Germany and exploring instruments and just Germany itself to start appreciating the life of Reger more than from a book.
Do you speak German then?
Not yet. I'm working on it.
But you're pronouncing it very well, actually. Yes.
Yeah.
Do you know the issue of tempo in Reger's works? Of course. How different is Reger's tempo indication from real performance practice, or do you play that fast as he wrote?
No. What I remember from my research is if Reger indicated a tempo or an affect, that for the most part that should be the fastest it's played. So many of these works can be played a lot slower, because he writes out so many of these compositions with small diminutions. A lot of his works have 30-second notes on end, and if you begin the piece too fast, those 30-second notes will become a blur. Whereas if you pull back the tempo and let those notes sing, the piece comes to life a bit more.
Exactly. Pull back the tempo.
Yes.
The fast tempo. The slow tempo can remain the same, probably.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. So that 30-second note flourishes and passages could be clearly heard, especially in lively acoustics, right?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. You hit here very important issue, Wyatt, about performing music too fast sometimes. Widor didn't like his toccata, to be played too fast. And Reger probably also, I don't know. Of course, Karl Straube was his advisor, right? Do you know how he advised Straube to play Reger's pieces?
No, not off the top of my head.
But he heavily edited many of his works. And even cut out some parts from some of the pieces, right? Make them short.
That's right. Yes.
Nice. Do you know what I'm talking? Opus 135.
Yes. Yes.
And Fugue in D minor. The famous one. Yes. But have you played this piece before, by the way?
Not 135B. The two main works of Reger that I regularly play are his Introduction Paschaliae in D without opus, and then his Choral Fantasy on Wüstenrecht und der Morgenstern. And I actually worked on that at Yale, Woolsey Hall, and that was interesting in itself, bringing that music to this American symphonic instrument. But then I resurrected the Choral Fantasy this past fall for the Reger Symposium we hosted here in Seattle, and I played it on the famous Flentrop at St. Mark's Cathedral. And several months before that performance, I started working out at the gym with a personal trainer to get me ready to play that work, which I ended up playing the majority of it on all manuals coupled, so that I could, make the smallest dynamic changes and playing from the great or positive and bring in a stop from the swell. But that all takes effort. It's very heavy action, as this organ is very large.
And you had completely different experiences, right? From Woolsey Hall, symphonic instrument, which is more geared toward French music, right?
French and transcriptions is really what Woolsey Hall plays. It has so many solo and color stops, which it's a wonderful organ in and of itself for that purpose. But the Flentrop is something very different and a different sound world.
Yeah, it is still, ancient sound, like in normal Flentrop tradition. And I've had this conversation with Roger Sherman about his recording, very early recording on this organ, which he recently released. Actually, on this podcast, we talked about that. It's very suitable for Baroque music, of course, but people make adjustments. If you cleverly adjust registration and bend it a little bit, the tradition, you might quite satisfactorily perform Reger's works too, probably.
Yeah, that Flentrop really can play almost everything. I know some people have played howls on it. I haven't played howls on that instrument yet because I run out of keys at the top of the keyboard in the D-flat Rhapsody. But pretty much everything I've brought there, I've been able to pull it off successfully with some minor changes and adjustments to manual order and stops.
That's why it's so important to train organists into adjusting to real situations from different organs. You have organ registration indications in many cases, right? In most cases, probably, especially in French tradition, they write down very detailed registration indications, and in other pieces too. But then you switch organs, you travel across the country or even internationally with the same repertoire. adjusting to different organs is really a challenge, don't you think?
Yes. Well, that's something that makes the organ department here at the University of Washington somewhat unique, because we don't have a large instrument on campus. We do many of our lessons and recitals in the main churches in Seattle and surrounding areas. And I've told several people this, that with all of the different organs I play and practice on here in Seattle, I never play an organ regularly with an AGO standard pedal board. Most of them are flat pedal boards of varying kinds, or like the Flentrop at St. Mark's Cathedral has an AGO standard pedal board, but it's offset by one note. So that's a little alteration you have to make in your mind if you're going to play the right notes. And it really makes us versatile. Whereas some other schools, there's just the main performance instrument that you have your lessons on, and you do your recitals. Yes. So I think that's a strength of the University of Washington organ department. And I've had much experience with being flexible over the years. Since I started performing concerts in 2010, I was usually on 2 different organs a week there for a period of time, and traveling for the most part with the same repertoire, and just have to accommodate different organs and their stop lists and voicing and whatnot.
So different styles, different traditions of organ building don't scare you, right? It's more of a challenge and the curiosity that leads you forward than fear of failure.
Yes, exactly. I told my current teacher, Carol Terry, that I will never again be scared of an EP, an electropneumatic instrument, having performed in Woolsey and used all of those swell boxes and divisional pistons and just grabbing stops with the hand. So since I was able to overcome that instrument to a point, I feel that anywhere else I go, even though it's not Woolsey Hall, I know how to poke pistons and use swell boxes and whatnot.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yes, and a lot of people are struggling to adjust. They are traveling the world with just one type of instrument at the hand. Maybe there are some people like that, and they are virtuosos on their instrument. But they remind me of like a violinist would carry their own instrument always in case, but then have a great challenge adjusting to different kind of violin, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. We organists are blessed actually because of the variety, enormous variety of instruments we encounter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes. So what's your probably least let me say it this way, least successful adjustment public performance? Have you had this experience when you really had to struggle on this organ? What was that?
There are a few concerts that resound in my memory that they just kind of went over like a lead balloon. And one of those concerts was very early in my performance career. I think was back in 2011. I was performing at Trinity United Methodist in downtown Denver on a beautiful 4-manual late 19th century Roosevelt instrument, an American-built instrument. And I had never encountered a Roosevelt organ before or really knew the history of the instrument and the kinds of sounds it had. So I remember, I think the first half of that program was Bach and Buxtehude, and I listened back to that recording, and I'm like, I didn't play that organ the way it was supposed to be played. And I've heard Bach and even French classic played on that instrument very successfully. It's just I went in there with a sound model from a different instrument, and I tried to apply that to this Roosevelt instrument, and it didn't come off well at all.
Uh-huh.
So
what would have worked better? What you think would have saved your recital if you did it differently?
If I did differently, I'd probably play different music. I probably keep at least one work of Bach, but work harder at maybe coupling down some stops from the pedal, or maybe a reed from the pedal, and using some 4-foot couplers and whatnot to add some brightness to the sound, as this organ had very much unison stops and a wide foundation. But on that recital itself, I did play Franck and Alain, so that came off a lot better than the Bach, but it counterbalanced. But even then, the Bach was somewhat of a flop.
I see. If you played it legato, let's say, in the romantic tradition, would that be, a better choice?
I absolutely think it would. I probably wouldn't go so far as getting Dupre's editions of Bach and playing from that, but accommodating the organ in my touch, I think would bring Bach off quite a lot better. I remember a few years ago, I was performing on the great Spreckels organ at Balboa Park in San Diego, California. And I opened that recital with the toccata in F major of Bach, BWV 540. And because that instrument is outdoors, it really doesn't have a sounding chamber that collects the acoustic. And that toccata, it felt like I was going against every grain in my being, that I played it, almost the whole thing, over legato to really let it sound good, because I had played with a détaché and normal Baroque touch, it would have sounded pokey and disjointed. So I needed to accommodate that and the lack of acoustic to pull off a piece like that.
Very smart choice, I think. You could have avoided that piece altogether, but if you wanted to play it, probably legato and a different type of touch would have been was actually a smart choice.
Yeah.
Because this was an environment of different kind of style, right? 20th century beginning style, where everyone played legato, everyone played symphonic and transcription music. Everyone was sort of different way of thinking and different type of writing, different kind of musical language too. Although some of the composers thought they are continuing Bach tradition too, especially in Dupre's days in France. Well, but you were smart. In this case, it really worked.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So you see how adjusting to different organs is a must to our common, our colleagues across the world, and I hope they will they will look differently. Or, I teach people Baroque music to be played with articulation. Probably you would teach that the same thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in extreme cases, in emergencies, maybe, right? You have to forget that. You have to think like a romantic, like a 20th century first half, right? Organist, and that really helps.
It does. Absolutely.
Wonderful. So I'm so enjoyed this conversation, Wyatt. Today, you opened your world to us. Let it closer to your ideas, and we talked about Reger and Weckmann and the double harpsichord concerto in C major, which you will shortly. Even today you will be practicing, I hope. Great. And your first piece from Flor Peters' method book, right? Which was just the beginning of your wonderful career that you started and still continue to develop. Wonderful. And your experiences with your mentor, Martin Jean, and of course today with Carol Terry. Give my regards to her. I hope to interview her one day on this podcast too. So wonderful. I wish all the success and creativity this year, Wyatt, and keep me posted. Let me know about your future developments, okay? And before we close, I think people around the world would be curious to know more about your world. So could you give our listeners a link where they can find your work online?
You can find my website at www.wyattsmith-organist.com.
Wyatt with double T, right?
Yes.
Smith-organist. Excellent. Organist.com. I will include this link so that people can literally click on it and visit your site. What will they find there? Can you describe a little bit?
I primarily update it with a list of upcoming concerts. I also keep a record of past concerts where I've played. One of these days when I'm not so busy with school, I need to do an overhaul and get information online about my new recording that I released last fall on the Raven label. I recorded on a beautiful 1925 Ernest M. Skinner organ in Vermilion, South Dakota. So I'll get that on my website eventually.
Wonderful. So I've been to Vermilion. It's a wonderful place, very cold in the winter, but they have fantastic instrument museum, right?
Absolutely. I was absolutely spoiled rotten getting to play harpsichords and forte pianos over there during my undergrad. And I very much miss being able to just go, 4 or 5 blocks to the other side of the campus from the School of Music to play these beautiful instruments.
Wonderful. So I will make sure to include this link into the description of this conversation, and hopefully people around the world will visit your site and get to know more about you, your future developments. Thank you so much, Wyatt, and keep producing, keep practicing, and good luck with this double harpsichord concerto.
Thank you, and thank you for having me here.
If you liked this conversation, I encourage you to visit my blog, Secrets of Organ Playing, at organduo.lt, where you will find lots of insights, practical advice, and training for every area of organ playing. You can subscribe to this blog for free to get your daily dose of inspiration and to be the first to know when any of my future podcasts roll out. I hope to help you reach your dreams in organ playing. I'm Vidas Pinkevičius. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you online really soon.